Be me. Silas, 29, tattoo artist, own chair in a decent shop. Waitlist about 6 months deep. My whole job is people sitting in front of me terrified. They shake, they sweat, half of them almost pass out over a bit of ink on the ribs. And I'm the one who keeps them calm. Steady hand, low voice. Breathe, you're fine, almost done. I'm good at it. It's the part of the job I'm actually proud of. Engaged at the time to Camille, 27, flight attendant. Her job, and I want you to really sit with this, is keeping a plane full of strangers calm. Turbulence hits. Kids start screaming. Some guy is white-knuckling the armrest. She's the one walking the aisle telling everyone it's normal. Stay seated. We've got you. Keeping calm under pressure is literally the thing she gets paid for. Remember that. It's going to matter a lot later. We'd been together almost 3 years, engaged for about one of those. And honestly, for most of it, things were good. She was funny, she was sharp, she had this way of making a dead Tuesday night feel like a plan. We met through a mutual friend at a barbecue. Nothing dramatic. Hit it off, moved in together maybe a year later. I thought I'd gotten lucky. My clients used to ask about her, and I'd light up talking about her. That's the honest truth. Then we started planning the wedding, and that's when the whole thing came apart. And it came apart because of me. Or that's what I believed for a long time. Let me back up and do this properly. The wedding was supposed to be small. That was the deal when I proposed. We actually talked about it. Small, cheap, close family, backyard, done by lunch, taco truck, if we felt fancy. We both said we didn't want to start a marriage buried in debt. Somewhere in the first couple months of the planning, that deal quietly died. It started with the venue. Her friend had gotten married at this place an hour outside the city. Lake view, big glass hall. Camille went to look at it just to see. And after that, nothing else was ever good enough. The backyard was suddenly embarrassing. A normal hall in town was suddenly sad. So it became the lake place, which cost more than my car, then the dress. The original plan was something off the rack, maybe altered. That turned into a designer name I couldn't pronounce with a fitting schedule like it was a medical procedure. The guest list was the one that really got me. We'd agreed on around 40. Her mom kept adding cousins, then coworkers got added, then people I was pretty sure Camille didn't even like. Last I checked it was pushing 200. And every single time, I asked how we were actually paying for any of this. The answer was some breezy version of, we'll figure it out. We meant me. She also hired a wedding planner about a month in, which I found out about after the fact. Came home one day, and there was an invoice on the counter with a number on it that made me sit down. When I asked, she acted like I was being cheap for even bringing it up. Said everyone who's serious about their day uses a planner. Did I want it to look thrown together? So now there was a whole extra person on payroll whose job was thinking up things for me to pay for. The food tasting is the one that sticks with me. We go to this catering place, they bring out little plates, and it's genuinely nice. I'm not gonna lie. But every single option came in 2 versions, the standard one and the premium one. And Camille picked premium on every plate without even glancing at the price card. Chicken, premium. The little appetizers, premium. Even the bread, somehow there was a premium bread. I made the mistake of gently saying, maybe we go standard on a couple things. She gave me this look in front of the caterer, this tight, embarrassed smile, and said, we're not serving our guests the cheap version, Silas. The caterer just kind of looked at the floor. I paid the deposit that afternoon. Premium bread and all. Let me be fair to her for a second. Camille worked and made decent money on her own. But flight attendant pay is not lake venue, designer dress, 200 guest money. So I picked up the slack, because that's what you do, right? I started taking every walk-in the shop would give me. Opened earlier, closed later, gave up my days off. There were weeks I was doing back-to-back sessions from open to close until my forearm was basically a dead limb. People don't understand that tattooing is physical labor. You're hunched over, holding a machine dead steady in one hand, muscles locked for hours at a time. Do that 6, sometimes 7 days a week, and your body starts sending you invoices. My elbow ached, my lower back was shot, my hand would cramp at night. I told myself it was temporary. Get through the wedding, claw the money back over the next year, slow down after. Just push through. At one point, I actually added up what I'd spent so far, sat down with my banking app on a rare night off. and the number genuinely made me feel sick. It was more than I'd saved in years, gone into deposits and dresses and premium bread. And the wedding was still months away with plenty more to pay. I remember thinking, if this is what the party costs, what's the marriage going to run me? Then I closed the app and told myself not to think about it, because thinking about it made my chest tight. Which, in hindsight, was my own body waving a flag I kept ignoring. Then the first one hit. I remember exactly where I was, because I was mid-session on a guy's shoulder piece, halfway through a long, clean line down the outside of his arm. The kind of line where if your hand jumps even a little, the whole thing is ruined. And out of nowhere, my chest just seized up, heart going like I'd sprinted up 10 flights of stairs. Hands went ice cold, vision pulled tight around the edges like I was looking down a tunnel. I had to lift the needle off his skin and mumble that I needed a quick water break, walked to the back, sat down on an overturned bucket, and genuinely tried to work out whether I was having a heart attack. I wasn't. It was a panic attack. First one of my entire life, at 29 years old, out of a clear sky. I finished that guy's tattoo somehow, with my hand trembling the whole way through. Had to go back over one section afterward because the line wasn't clean enough for me. Comped him the touch-up, told him it was my fault, my off day. Drove home rattled and embarrassed. Figured it was a fluke, bad sleep, too much coffee, one weird night. It was not a fluke. Over the next few weeks they kept coming, and they got a rhythm to them. Sitting in the car at a red light, hands would go. Lying in bed at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling, with my heart pounding for no reason. Once in the grocery store of all places, standing frozen in front of the cereal like an idiot until it passed. The worst one happened right before a big session. A full back piece I'd been booked for weeks in advance. Clients in the waiting area, stencils ready, and I'm in the bathroom with my heart trying to climb out of my chest. Had to run the tap and splash water on my face and talk myself down out loud like I was one of my own nervous clients. Got through it, did the work, client never knew. But I sat in my car afterward for 20 minutes because I didn't trust my hands on the wheel. My sleep fell apart completely. I'd get maybe 3 broken hours and then lie there wired. Started dropping weight without trying, clothes hanging off me. And here's a detail that tells you everything. My clients noticed I was off before Camille did. A regular of mine, older guy I'd been tattooing for years, sat down in my chair one day and just said, "You look rough. Everything all right with you?" And I lied, said it was busy season, waved it off. A near stranger clocked that I was falling apart before the woman I lived with. So here's where I made the mistake that started it all. I decided to actually tell Camille what was happening. Because that's what you're supposed to do. That's the person you're marrying. You're supposed to be able to hand them the ugly stuff and trust they'll hold it. So, one evening after she got back from a rotation, calm night, dinner done, I sat her down. Told her straight, no drama, said I've been having panic attacks, real ones, I'm not sleeping, the money stress is eating me alive, and I need us to pull this wedding back to what we originally agreed on. I even said please. I clearly remember saying, please, I need your help here. And she looked at me the way you'd look at someone who told you they were quitting their job to become a clown. Not worried, not soft. Something closer to disgusted. The first words out of her mouth, and I'm quoting exactly because you don't forget this, were, "You need to man up." Then she kept going. Told me her father never once fell apart like this in his life. Said a husband is supposed to be the stable one, the rock. And here I was, cracking over a spreadsheet. Asked me, if a seating chart does this to me, what am I going to do when we have real problems? Said it in this flat, almost bored voice, like I was a disappointment she'd been expecting. I sat there and took every word of it, because a part of me thought maybe she was right, maybe I was being pathetic. Then I said the one thing that should have ended the relationship on the spot, looked right at her and said, "Your entire job is calming down people who are panicking. You do it for total strangers every single day." She didn't even blink at that. Said, "That's different, that's professional. Those people are strangers, and it's her job. This, meaning me, was just me being weak. So let's make sure that landed." A stranger having a meltdown at 30,000 feet gets her patience, her warm voice, her steady hand, her whole trained skill set. The man she's about to marry, cracking in front of her, gets 2 words, man up. And I let it go. I actually let it go. told myself she was exhausted from the flight. It came out harsher than she meant. She was tired. Looking back, that's almost funny. She meant every syllable of it. I actually tried one more time, maybe a week or two later, because I'm apparently a slow learner. Caught her in a good mood. Thought I'd found a better way to say it. Told her I wasn't asking her to fix me. I just needed her in my corner. Needed to know she was on my side. And she sighed like I was a chore. Said she couldn't be my therapist, that it wasn't fair to put all this on her, that she had her own stress with the flights. Which, fine, except I hadn't asked her to be my therapist. I'd asked her to care. She ended it by saying, maybe I should look into getting help in the same tone you'd use to tell someone to get their car looked at, and then went back to scrolling venues on her phone. That was the last time I brought it up to her. One of the attacks actually happened right in front of her, and how she handled it told me more than any conversation ever could. We were in the car. She was driving us back from some wedding errand, and it came on hard. Chest locked, breathing went shallow, hands shaking in my lap. I asked her to pull over for a minute so I could get some air. She sighed, didn't pull over, and said we didn't have time. We were already late. Kept driving while I sat there trying to breathe through it, staring out the window, counting streetlights to calm down. When it passed, she didn't ask if I was okay. Said, in this clipped voice, that I really needed to get a handle on this before the wedding, because apparently the concern wasn't that I was suffering. The concern was that I might do it in front of the guests. Because it didn't stop there, it turned into a whole running thing. My anxiety became her go-to bit at gatherings. A few weeks after that first talk, we had dinner at her parents' place. Nice evening, wine's out, her mom's asking how the venue booking went. And Camille, completely unprompted, goes, "Oh, Silas nearly had a breakdown over the deposit paperwork. Can you even imagine?" Anne laughs, and everyone at the table laughs with her. Her dad does this little knowing chuckle and says something about how planning a wedding really separates the boys from the men. I sat there with a forkful of food going cold in my hand. Smiled like a fool, so I wouldn't be the guy who ruined a nice dinner. That became the template. At her friend's birthday, don't stress Silas out. He's delicate. At a cousin's thing, watch it. He might have an episode. Always delivered with a laugh, always in front of a group, always with that light little tone that made it impossible to push back on. There was one at a dress fitting that I think about more than the others. She dragged me along to give an opinion, which was a joke because my opinion never mattered. The seamstress and Camille's mom are there, and I must have looked tired because Camille glances at me in the mirror and goes to the whole room. "Don't mind him. He's been very fragile lately. We have to handle him with care." And does this little laugh. The seamstress laughs politely. Her mom laughs. And I'm standing there being talked about like a nervous dog they brought to the vet. A grown man paying for everything in that room, reduced to a bit for the ladies. And every time, I said nothing. Because the second I got upset about being mocked for getting upset, I'd have proved her whole point. See how the trap works when you're inside it. Get hurt, and you're too sensitive. Don't react, and it keeps happening. Around this same stretch, I started noticing she was pulling away from me. The affection just drained out of the thing. She'd come home from a trip and go straight to her phone without really looking at me. Plans got canceled last minute. Too tired, long rotation, not tonight. But here's what didn't add up and started to bother me. Too tired for me, sure. Never once too tired to add another line item to the wedding. Never too drained to book another tasting or another fitting. The budget climbed every week while she got colder every week. Then I found out she'd been talking about me behind my back, and how I found out is the part that broke something. Her coworker, another flight attendant, was over one afternoon. I was in the back room sorting supplies. They were in the kitchen, and the wall in that apartment is thin as paper. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard my own name, so I stopped moving. Camille was telling her the whole panic attack situation, not worried, not asking for advice, telling it as a story, as a bit, as gossip. The friend laughs and says something like, "You cannot marry a man who cracks under a seating chart." And Camille agrees, doesn't defend me, doesn't say he's really struggling, doesn't say I'm worried about him, just agrees, easy as anything. Then she says the line I still hear in my head sometimes. She goes that she's honestly starting to think this is just male toxicity showing up late, that I'm making my stress into everyone else's problem, that men do this thing where they demand emotional labor and dress it up as vulnerability, so nobody's allowed to criticize it. That maybe the anxiety is just entitlement with a sad face painted on it, and the friend eats it right up. Oh, totally, so true. I stood there in the back room, feeling my ears go hot. The woman I was about to marry was in my own kitchen, reframing me as a toxic man for admitting I was scared. The person whose whole career is telling frightened strangers they're safe had decided that me being frightened was a character flaw, a moral failing, toxicity. And I didn't say anything that day either. I know how that sounds, believe me. But something shifted in me after standing behind that wall. I stopped trying to make her understand. You can't argue someone into caring about you. I'd been treating the whole thing like a misunderstanding. Like, if I just explained it clearly enough, she'd finally get it and soften. Standing there listening to her laugh, I finally understood there was nothing left to explain. She understood perfectly. She just didn't care. And somewhere along the way she'd decided, my fear made me less of a man. The next stretch is a bit of a blur of me, quietly going through the motions. Still paying, still nodding along at fittings, still eating the jokes at dinners, but checked all the way out. And here's the grim part. The attacks actually eased up a little once I stopped trying to reach her. Turns out a big chunk of what was choking me was her, and the second I stopped hoping she'd help, some of the pressure came off. That should have told me everything right then. Anyway, this is where Griff comes in, and Griff is the reason I'm not still in it. Griff owns the shop. Older guy, been tattooing since before any of this was mainstream, so covered in ink you can't find a patch of bare skin on him. Divorced twice, doesn't soften a single thing he says, kind of a legend to everyone who works there. He'd obviously clocked that I'd been a hollow version of myself for months. He'd caught me a few times just staring at nothing between clients, machine off, not moving. Once he watched me redo the same small line 3 times because my hand wouldn't sit still, and he didn't say a word, just clocked it. Griff's not the type to pry. He'll let a man stew as long as the man needs to. But there's a limit, and I guess I hit it. One slow afternoon, no clients on the books, he drags a stool over next to my station, sits down, and just goes, "All right, out with it. What is it?" And I don't fully know why, but the whole thing came pouring out. The wedding, the money, the attacks, the man up, the dinners, the kitchen, all of it. Griff let me get through the entire thing without interrupting once. Lit a smoke, leaned back against the counter, and just let me finish. Then he said the handful of words that turned the key. He goes, "So she told you to man up?" I said, "Yeah, pretty much." He goes, "So man up." I started to explain that's not what he meant. That's not fair. And he put a hand up and cut me right off. Said, "A real man doesn't beg to be treated right, Silas. He doesn't keep explaining himself over and over to someone who already made her mind up about him. He just stops staying somewhere he's not wanted. You want to man up? That's what it actually looks like. It doesn't look like sitting there taking it and hoping she changes." And that was the whole speech. No violins, no big emotional moment, no arm around the shoulder. Just an old guy who's seen it before, handing me the truth in about 4 flat sentences. I carried that around for a couple of days, and something quietly settled into place. I kept waiting to feel torn about it, the way you're supposed to feel about ending a 3-year relationship, and it never came. Every time I pictured actually going through with the wedding, my chest went tight. Every time I pictured walking away, it loosened. My own body had already voted. I'd just been out voting it with guilt for months. Once I stopped doing that, the answer was obvious, and it was quiet. The fog I'd been living in kinda lifted off me. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was clear, which is a very different feeling. So I did what I'm actually good at, which is careful, patient, planned-out work. You never rush a good tattoo. You map it, you stencil it, you line the whole thing out before the needle ever touches skin. I decided to handle this exactly the same way. First thing I did was go through every single wedding contract we had. Every deposit, every signed agreement, every receipt, every card statement. And what I found genuinely impressed me, in a dark way. The venue, the caterer, the dress, the photographer, all the big non-refundable stuff. Almost every bit of it was booked in Camille's name, or in her parents' names. The reasoning at the time, months back, had been that it was just easier for them to handle the bookings and the phone calls. Easier, right? Sure. So all the deposits sat on their side of the ledger, in their names, as their obligations. But the money that had actually paid for those deposits, every dollar of that had come out of my account. I'd been quietly funding assets in her name and her family's name for months. If you'd asked me back then, I'd have called it teamwork, us pulling together. Staring at those statements now, I saw it for exactly what it was. I actually laid it all out on Griff's kitchen table one night, all the printouts side by side, and did the math on how much of my own money had gone into things that legally had nothing to do with me. The venue deposit, out of my account, booked under her father's name. The dress, my money, her name on the order. The caterer, the premium everything, paid by me, contracted to her. I'd been so deep in "we're a team" that I never once stopped to notice whose name was on any of it. And the pattern was too clean to be an accident. Every single thing that could be clawed back or resold sat in their names. Every payment that just vanished into a deposit came out of mine. My cash, her paperwork, her family's names on the dotted line. So I made a cold, careful list of everything I could still cancel or claw back on my end. The recurring payments tied to my own card, the pieces still sitting inside their cancellation windows, the deposits I'd put down directly. Lined every one of them up like a stencil. And then I waited for the right evening to do it. And I want to be honest about something. I was not nervous doing any of this. Which is the funniest part of the whole story to me. The thing that had been giving me panic attacks for the better part of a year. And the day I finally decided to blow the entire wedding up, I was calm as a flat lake. Steadiest my hands had been in 6 months. She got home from a rotation on an evening I can place pretty clearly because it was raining hard, the loud kind, drumming on the windows. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and launched into a story about some passenger who'd been a nightmare on the flight. And I let her tell the whole thing. Let her finish. Then I took the ring, set it on the kitchen table, and slid it across so it stopped right in front of her. And I said it plain, no speech, no shaking. You told me to man up, so I did. The wedding's off. And she laughed. She genuinely laughed in my face. Because in her head, there was simply no version of reality where I actually went through with it. I was the anxious one, the delicate one, the guy who cracks under a seating chart. And guys like that don't leave. They cling. They apologize. They come back. So she figured I was staging a little moment, making a point, and I'd be crawling back by morning saying sorry for the theatrics. She said something like, "Okay, you've made your dramatic little statement. Are you done now?" I told her I was very much done. Reached over, picked up the bag I'd already packed and stashed by the door earlier that day, and set it upright where she could see it. She stopped laughing the second she saw that bag. Then she switched tactics on a dime, which honestly told me everything about how real the previous 3 years had been. Went from mocking to soft in about 5 seconds. Suddenly it was, "Wait, let's talk about this. You're overreacting, we can fix the budget, I'll pull the guest list back." All the things I'd been begging for over months, offered up in the span of one panic. Her panic, not mine, notice that. I told her the budget was never the real problem. The problem was that I came to her scared, and she laughed. She started to say she never laughed, and I just looked at her, because we both knew that wasn't true. Picked up my bag, said, "Take care of yourself," and walked out into the rain. Didn't slam anything, didn't make a speech, just left. I went and crashed in the spare room at Griff's place for a while. And that first night, in a strange bed, I slept 8 hours straight through for the first time in months. No chest lock, no 2 a.m. ceiling, nothing. My body figured out the truth before my head had fully caught up. The fallout came fast, and it came from every direction. The very next morning, I canceled everything on my end that was still cancelable. The payments tied to me, killed. Which meant every deposit still standing was now sitting 100% on Camille and her parents. Tens of thousands of dollars of non-refundable, easier for them to handle bookings. No groom, no wedding, and nobody funding the gap anymore. Her parents got the full picture within a day or two. And here's the part that I did not expect, but absolutely loved. They weren't angry at me. They were furious at her. Because when they sat her down and actually demanded to know what happened, the real story came out. Not, "We just grew apart." Not, "It was mutual, these things happen." The true version. That I had come to her scared and struggling and asked her for help. And she'd told me to man up, then turned me into a punchline at their own dinner table more than once. Her dad, the separates the boys from the men guy, apparently had absolutely nothing to say to that one. Word moved through both families fast. One of her own relatives actually reached out to me, quietly, a few days after. Said they'd heard the real version and they were sorry, that I hadn't deserved to be treated like that. Said the family had genuinely liked me and were embarrassed by how it all went. I didn't need the apology, but it landed anyway because it came from her side. Even her own people could see it, and the sympathy landed almost entirely on my side of the line, which blindsided her completely. She'd spent months carefully building me up to everyone as the fragile one, the unstable one. So, when the wedding detonated, her obvious plan was to play the poor, heartbroken bride left standing at the altar. Problem was, way too many people now knew the actual reason it fell apart. You can't sell yourself as the wronged woman when half the guest list has personally heard you laughing about your fiancé's panic attacks. She did try to run her version anyway. At some family gathering a few weeks out, apparently she started telling it as me, getting cold feet and bailing, poor her. Except, one of the people sitting right there had been at that dinner where she made the paperwork joke. And just quietly said, "That's not how I remember it going." And the whole table went awkward. The story died right there in front of everyone. You can only rewrite history when nobody in the room was taking notes. Too many people had been taking notes. Then it reached her work circle, and that's where the hypocrisy really came home. Those coworkers she'd told the story to, the ones who'd laughed along in my kitchen and elsewhere, they heard how the whole thing ended. And a couple of the decent ones were genuinely not okay with how she'd handled it. Because really, think about the picture for a second. A flight attendant. A woman whose entire trained profession, the thing she's paid and drilled to do, is talk terrified people down and keep a calm cabin when things get rough. Went home every night and told the man she loved that his fear made him weak. That being scared made him toxic. That his vulnerability was just entitlement in disguise. The contradiction was too loud to look away from once it was laid out flat. The exact skills she performed on command for total strangers, she wouldn't spend a single cent of on me. The coworker who'd been in my kitchen that day, the one who laughed, apparently had a real change of heart once she heard the ending. Told a couple people she felt bad about egging Camille on. Said something like, "Put that way, it's pretty ugly, isn't it?" And it was. You can laugh at my fiancé's a bit dramatic over coffee. It hits different when the full picture is a man asking for help and getting mocked for it until he walked. And now, that was the story quietly following her around at work. About 2 weeks after I walked out, the messages started. And this is the part the whole thing was building toward, so stay with me. The first few were pure anger. How could I do this to her? How could I humiliate her like this? I'd ruined everything she'd worked for. One of them accused me of doing the whole thing on purpose to make her look bad. As if I'd faked panic attacks for a year, as some long con to embarrass her at a wedding. She even got a mutual friend to reach out on her behalf, testing the water. "Hey, Camille's really struggling. Maybe you two should talk." I told that friend politely that there was nothing to talk about, and they backed off pretty quick once they heard my side. I didn't reply to a single one of hers. Then the tone changed completely. The next batch were long, really long, the kind you can tell took a while to write. She said she'd been under enormous stress too, that the wedding pressure had gotten to her, that she hadn't meant the things she said. Said she'd been scared and lashing out, and she took all of it out on me. Said she needed me now, that she couldn't face her parents and the money and the shame of it all on her own. Said she felt like she was drowning, and could I please just talk to her? Just once. Please. She actually used the word please. Read that back slowly and let it sit. It was the exact thing I had done months earlier. Come to my partner scared, sleepless, overwhelmed, drowning, and quietly ask for help, and get handed 2 words and a laugh. Now it was her turn to be the one panicking, her turn to need a soft voice, a steady hand, someone to tell her it was going to be okay. The role reversed all the way around. The woman who calms frightened strangers for a living, and who labeled my fear toxic, was now the one begging me to calm her down. The messages kept coming for days. Morning ones, late night ones. A few that were clearly written at 3 in the morning when the ceiling gets loud. I recognized that hour. I'd spent a lot of nights awake in it myself. She said she couldn't sleep, that she felt like she was falling apart, that she just needed one kind word from me. The exact words could have come out of my own mouth 8 months earlier. Same fear, same sleepless hour, same reaching out to the one person who was supposed to catch her. Only difference was, when I'd reached, she'd told me to man up. I'll be honest, I thought about it for a while. I'm not a cruel guy. I genuinely sat with it. Some dumb loyal part of me even wanted to help her, which is embarrassing to admit. But then I remembered the overturned bucket in the back of the shop, the ice-cold hands, the tunnel vision, the 2 a.m. ceiling, the forkful of cold food while a whole table laughed, the thin kitchen wall, and the word toxic coming out of her mouth about me. And I typed back 2 words, man up. That was it. Didn't add a paragraph, didn't explain myself, didn't twist the knife, just handed her back the precise advice she'd given me at the exact moment she finally understood in her own body what it felt like to receive it. Then I blocked her number, and that was the last thing I ever said to Camille. It's been a good while now. The shop's better than it's ever been, the wait list is longer, my hand is dead steady, and I sleep like a rock. The panic attacks basically stopped once she was fully out of my life, which told me just about everything I needed to know about what was really causing them. I did end up talking to someone about the anxiety, a real professional, for a few months after, partly to make sure it wasn't something deeper than the relationship. Turns out a person can only get told he's weak for being human so many times before his body starts screaming. Who knew? I eat better now. I sleep. I took a proper vacation for the first time in years. Closed the shop for a week and just did nothing. And the world didn't end. Griff gave me my old chair back like nothing happened, and a slow nod, which from him is basically a hug. A few of my regulars figured out something had gone on and just quietly wished me well without making it a thing. Good people, which told me just about everything I needed to know about what was really causing them. I heard through the family grapevine that she eventually started telling people I abandoned her, that I walked out and left her high and dry for no reason at all. Sure, the anxious, delicate cracks under a seating chart guy. Abandon the trained professional whose literal job is staying calm while everything falls apart around her. Make that make sense. Camille spent months telling me that a real man handles his stress quietly and doesn't make it everybody else's problem, so I handled it. Quietly. Called off the wedding, kept my money, kept my hands, kept my chair, and got my sleep back. She's the one who ended up drowning in deposits, with a story she can't spin no matter how she tells it. She told me to man up. Honestly, the best advice anyone's ever given me. Only thing I'd change is I should have charged her for the session.